But what is Trump going to do about it? What can he do about it? The answer, alas, is not much, at least not much that is likely to have an effect on the Iranian leader's behavior. Trump is caught in a trap, and it's a trap of his own making. Welcome to the Atlantic Current. I'm Vince Martin, here as always with Tull McAdoo from the Irish Politics newsletter. As that quote suggests, we're going to start talking about Iran. We're also going to talk about some interesting comments from one of the Irish political parties that fit into a pattern that Tull's been documenting for a few years, right, Tull?
Hello, listeners. Yes, Vincent, we're going to first of all talk about Iran and explain why we haven't spoken about Iran in quite a while, considering we did a stretch of 3 or 4 podcasts in a row where all we spoke about was Iran. So we'll touch on that. And for many years, I've been documenting the conspiracy theorists, the elected conspiracy theorists in Sinn Féin, which won't surprise you, Vincent, that some of their views line up with some of the more weirder aspects of MAGA Trump also.
That really does surprise me. I thought that was another form of American exceptionalism. We're the best at believing conspiracy theories and electing people who believe in conspiracy theories. So at least we're not alone there.
Well, Vincent, I've been coming down quite hard on the United States recently, and I want to, even the scoreboard here. I'd like to let our listeners in the United States know that, conspiracy theories are not something of the MAGA world either. They inhabit all parts of European politics also.
So we can pivot from there right back to Iran, because we are talking about the most famous conspiracy theorist in the world, Donald Trump. He is in China right now. Iran, no doubt, is going to be a topic of discussion. And as you said, we haven't discussed it very much. Reason is we haven't heard any news really in a few weeks, right? Not to dismiss what is going on and the struggles that the Iranian people are facing, but in terms of broader geopolitics, there's really been no news for a few weeks now, right?
It's almost like we're in a stalemate. It's almost a static existence at the moment that the war is in. And that's because Iran has proven to the world it controls the Straits of Hormuz and the United States doesn't.
Yeah.
So Trump has lost the war, I think, and it's about saving face for him now at the moment, I think more than anything else.
I don't know that I would say he's lost the war. I think you can say that he's losing the war. The quote we opened with is from a writer at an American online magazine called Slate. His name is Fred Kaplan, really outstanding analyst and writer on the American military. He was one of the most intelligent and accurate voices during the war in Iraq, for instance. We'll obviously link to this on our Substack. But he agrees with your point, and he talks about all the demands that Iran is making. And they include an end to the war, an end to the blockade. They are asking for reparations, the end of sanctions. And Kaplan points out that these are the demands that the winner of a war would issue, right?
Yes, of course.
The great example is World War I, right? The Allies demand and receive huge reparations from Germany. He kind of points out that this seems a little bit weird, but he says, in asymmetric war, the ostensibly weaker power wins by not losing. And that's where we are, right? Yep. And Iran is not losing. And I think the problem for Trump when he gets back from China, the avenues he has to ending that don't seem particularly palatable.
No, of course not, because, as I said earlier, Iran has demonstrated that its grip over the strait is essentially its most potent deterrent. And you don't necessarily need to win a war. You just have to carry a big bloody stick. And Iran's big bloody stick is the Strait of Hormuz, and they know it. And it's probably more consequential than their nuclear program, If you think about it, everybody was, Iran can't get their nuclear weapons. That'll be terrible. Sure, all they needed to do was close the straits. I suppose it's a strategy other smaller, weaker countries are looking at the moment and how to deal with massive geopolitical superpowers or form of superpowers. Are we coming to an end of the great superpower era, I wonder, Vincent?
You think?
Russia can't beat Ukraine. China are not going to take back Taiwan anytime soon. And the United States of America, the country with the greatest navy in the world, a country that's ruled the waves for the last 100 years, can't get the straits open. And there used to be an old maxim, whoever ruled the waves ruled the world.
Right.
And the United States has shown at the moment they can't rule the waves anymore.
If you go back through those historical periods, there are also these weird little conflicts that you'll just sort of randomly see mentioned for a paragraph and a half in some history book where the British Empire actually suffered like a stinging defeat on an island in Southeast Asia in 1789. Like there are sort of weird things that pop up. I don't know if this on its own reflects the end of American dominance. I think that's really going to come down to who Trump's successor is and what their strategy is. I think we still have enough that we can be the superpower if we want to be.
Vincent, you're kind of pushing it back against the era of Pax Americana being over. An incident happened during the week, I think, when Rubio went to Italy to meet the Italian Prime Minister Meloni, and he went in with a shopping list of demands, not requests, demands. And she practically threw him out of Rome. Gave him a boot up the backside and said, back to the United States, pal. I'm not letting you refuel or rearm here in Italy to go and bomb Iran. She said, it's not happening. And as the United States is threatening, we're going to pull all our troops out of Europe. An under-discussed and an under-analysed part of the United States putting out of Europe is that they have nowhere to refuel.
Yeah.
They have a number of bombers that can fly from, California to Iran. We saw that when they bombed Iran's nuclear facilities the first time. But these are limited options. They need to be able to refuel in Germany or Italy or Poland or wherever the case may be. So it's a short hop, skip and a jump to Iran rather than, a 30-hour flight, which carries its own risks and consequences and that kind of stuff. And they don't have enough planes to do those kind of flights in the first place. So Europe is just not a case of, United States being in Europe to protect Europe. It's actually a case of it's a logistics base also en route to Iran, to the Middle East, or to wherever they need to go to.
Yeah, in general, that argument from the right that the United States has all these bases in Europe out of the goodness of our heart. Yeah, all our presidents just spend 80 years protecting Europe for no benefit of our own, just solely because we wanted to protect the free world. I mean, it's just like, come on, guys, Jesus, this is not. Yeah, obviously there are huge strategic, benefits to us having a role in Europe. There's an Irish writer on Substack, Jason Omani. I said, is that
Omani? Yeah.
Omani. Okay. He's made the point that the nuclear umbrella that people in MAGA complain about, that the U.S. put that in not to protect Europe from nuclear war necessarily, but because they wanted the decision-making power of a nuclear weapon centralized in America, which A, allowed us to promote our power, but B, also prevented some rogue Italian general from nuking Moscow for whatever, the safety aspect to it. This whole idea that the U.S. can pull out of Europe without any cost to ourselves. It's just one of the most ignorant arguments being made in American politics right now, which is a high bar to clear, let's be honest.
Yeah. I can tell you, when I was going through the transcript of one of the Italian newspapers, thank you, Google Translate, and they were going on quite heavily that it would be unthinkable for an Italian Prime Minister to throw any representative of the United States, give him a short shift and tell him to be on his way. In the past, it went, okay, we can move things around, and to help the United States. But she said no, outright no.
Yeah, that's a great point.
What strikes me here is that 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, an American Secretary of State arriving in Italy and being told to sling his hook would have been unthinkable.
Yeah.
And because Trump is so unpredictable, and as you've alluded to on many occasions, that, he's distracted by the last thing that was said to him, his attention span is so short that, his allies in Europe don't care what he thinks anymore or what he's going to do anymore, because there's no point in trying to second guess him. There's no point in trying to, outfox him in 4D chess because he'll do something totally erratic. He doesn't. I don't think he conforms to game theory very much. But,
no. He would be a miserable human being to play poker against. I will grant him that.
Yeah. No, essentially what's happened here is the United States is an unreliable ally, so nobody's going to play ball with him. Nobody's going to say, all right, Mr. Trump, you can have whatever you want here because we know it's for the global good or the Western Alliance good or NATO good. It's not happening anymore for Trump, I'm afraid. And I think, as you said, it depends on who comes next. But at the moment, the era of Pax Americana is in decline, my friend. I don't see it going any other way at the moment as long as the Mad King's in charge.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's something we've talked about in various contexts a few times, which is, does this relationship get repaired in 2029? And obviously it depends on if the next American president is trying to repair the relationship. But even that aside, how much damage has been done. And that's going to be an interesting interesting long-term effect of all this. In the near term, I think that's interesting because that does constrain his options a little bit as well. One thing that a global power might do in a conflict like that is really try and bring global pressure to bear. And he has undercut America's ability to do that. And that leaves essentially military options. And that's where I think that first quote, it really comes to the fore, because when this started about the idea of just bombing Iran into regime change, you made the point then, that's never happened, right? Human history.
No.
Right. There's never a documented example of regime change by Air Force, and that leaves ground troops, which I said at the beginning of this, it's just a red line. I just don't think he can put ground troops in. There's been a couple leaks here and there that he's thinking about it, maybe some targeted incursions and stuff. I think a single American boot on the ground is a red line. And the one thing that I think is interesting about that is one of the very few, if not the only area of Trump's presidency where I think he actually will get pushback from the people around him. We've talked so much about the second term being different that everyone's enabling him in a way they did in his first term. But ground troops, the people around him, they're going to push back as hard as they can. Marco Rubio wants to be president of the United States. There's no question about that. He's ambitious by the standards of people in D.C. He is ambitious.
Yeah.
If they put ground troops, he's putting his political career on the line. Because if that fails, he's done. This is his war. If you're J.D. Vance and they put in ground troops, you have to at least have a meeting about resigning, don't you?
You do, yes. Yes. But the only thing he's ever been consistent on that he's been against war, against troops on the ground. In fairness to him, that's the only thing I've ever remembered him being consistent about. Dan Kane, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he's been cautious from the jump. He's not pushing for this. Hegseth, I don't know. But here's one of the last places where the institutions, I think, are going to try and hold up. So if he can't go through the air and he can't go through the ground, I don't know what he does. And that's why we're sitting here going, oh, we haven't talked about it in a few weeks. That's why there has been no news for a few weeks. I don't think he has a good option. Well, Vincent's right. Goals at the start of the war were regime change. All right. And
well, I don't know about that.
He came out and said regime change. You know, and so
he came out and said a lot of things. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the long-running criticisms. But yeah, I'm half joking. You're right.
Yeah, I don't know whether that was ever plausible or realistic. Who knows? But
right.
But apart from weakening the regime's hold on power, Trump has strengthened it, at least temporarily, anyway. But like, there's a whole lot of widespread opposition to this absolutely nefarious Iranian regime, and they're very, very bad people. We should be on the record as saying that they're awful. But like populations elsewhere, when you come under external attack, you're going to rally around the flag. You're seeing relatives that are maybe serving in the Iranian military who are dead. And when you destroy civilian infrastructure like the United States has done in Iran, you know, people are going to look at that as an assault on themselves.
Yeah.
Right. Not necessarily assault on the ruling clerics or the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. The nation's going to see that as an assault on itself.
If you do that and then tell them to go out in the streets and fight back against the regime, it certainly undercuts their belief that what's coming after they risk their lives to fight the regime is something that much better.
Yeah, so, and we did an episode on this, Vincent, that Trump didn't war game everything properly, and he didn't take in scenarios such as whether Iran would retaliate and close the straits. He didn't seem to factor that in. And of course, he had the Israeli Prime Minister, Bibi, pouring honey in his ear, telling the war would be quick, clean and decisive and over in no time.
Yeah, and as I said before, you cannot decouple the impact of Venezuela in particular from this. He absolutely thought this was going to be another quick Venezuela. Win. They would go in, get a regime change, find somebody more pliable. Now, he said recently, he said this a couple different times in a couple different ways, that one of the problems they've had is that they killed the people that they thought that they could do business with, basically. They almost killed too many of the ruling leadership that some of the moderates went to. Now, whether that was accidental or bad intelligence, he hasn't really said, and it's coming from Donald Trump in the middle of a war. So I don't know if you can 100% believe that that's true, that they had somebody in mind that they thought would be roughly similar to what Delcy Rodriguez, Maduro's replacement in Venezuela, has been. But
when you're mentioning Venezuela there, and you talk about Denmark is coming to mind also, and Iran, on the 250th anniversary of the United States being founded, by throwing off its imperial shackles. I think there's an element of imperial hubris going on here within the Trump regime, and they thought they had the run of the world, I suppose, so to speak, in the same way the British had 250 years ago. And now they've been shown to be quite vulnerable in their tactical thinking. They don't seem to think things out quite as strenuously as they used to in the past. And I think that's imperial hubris. Of course, the United States is not an imperial nation in the same way the United Kingdom was 250 years ago, but there is a lot of similarities there.
Yeah, I think there could be some truth to that. The counter argument would be that Donald Trump was elected saying that we don't want to be imperial anymore. We're done being imperial. When people try and understand why he reversed field, I think people still underestimate Venezuela. I think they really do. I think he got talked into that one. He was told it was a good idea. It worked so spectacularly, and particularly the way it worked in what he saw, because he was watching it live. He saw this unbelievable display of military force, and I think the lesson he took is, there's nothing the American military can't do. That is, I think, a different error than what we did in Iraq, because the error in Iraq, I think, was not about our military capabilities. It was about how people in Iraq would respond. We thought if we went in and toppled him, we'd, be greeted as liberators, and that was not the case. I think in Iran, Donald Trump thought we would just go in and topple the regime and have somebody new. They wouldn't be greeting us as liberators. We wouldn't be there long enough. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
But here we are. And again, I have no idea what the path out for him is.
There's no
Iran is not stupid. They're not going to give him a deal that's better than the one that they had under Obama. It's almost certainly going to be worse. I don't know how he can save face and stomach that. I think you have to believe he's getting bored, right? I mean, he's not a guy. Yeah, he's got to be bored about this. We've gone a long way talking about why we haven't talked about it, but I've said from the beginning, I think this is all going to come down to, at some point, he's going to take a deal. He's going to say it was the best deal ever, and then we'll be done. But
yes, it's a case of, Vincent, can the Iranian regime outlast Trump's patience, is what you're trying to say there.
Yeah, I mean, I think a little bit, because it's not like, they do have a ton of economic pressure, and they're going to have rising pressure from their people, as repressive as they are, and as cowed as those people are.
Well, the regime in Iran is betting that the economic costs won't hurt them any more than what they're already enduring anyway. So what have they got to lose?
They need to rebuild. You can't have people living the way that they're living even for a year. I think that is the one thing that will get them to the table, is to try and get some kind of reparations. Now, Trump said, who has posted, almost without exaggeration, 200 times about Barack Obama sending pallets of cash to the Iranians, is probably going to have a hard time giving them money. But there's ways to make that perhaps look a little less.
Maybe another Iran contract.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, those guys are still hanging around. Most of those guys. I'm pretty sure Oliver North's still alive. Give him a call. See how you can funnel some money that way. Yeah, that's right. Everything comes back around, I guess. Yeah, we will see what happens in Iran. If I had a guess, I think we're going to come back to it in a month and talk again about why we haven't talked about it. I don't see an easy off ramp. Each side needs something that the other side finds unacceptable.
I'm going to leave it on this, is that the Trump administration are going to find it very, very hard, no matter what happens, to be able to claim a win,
Yeah.
No matter what happens here, I think that the damage is done, and there's no reversing it, politically anyway. Whatever, both financially and militarily, you will be able to rebuild those two elements. The global economy will grow again, and you'll be able to restock your missiles and your military hardware. But the political fallout, he's not going to be able to escape from.
Probably the right guess at the time. If it does go that way, it is going to be the most fascinating test for the right-wing media machine that there is. For what Fox News in particular can convince their viewers is the truth. It will be fascinating to see how they spin that. But yeah, we will see. We are going to now shift back to Ireland. Sinn Féin, right, Tull?
Yes, everybody's favourite conspiracy theory political party. Now, I'm sure other political parties are chock-a-block full of conspiracy theorists also, but they're probably better at keeping a lid on this than Sinn Féin, perhaps.
Fair. Okay.
Some of these people, they have kind of tiny imaginations, and they treat facts like an optional accessory, Vincent, and their constituency's paranoia. It's not the people they're meant to represent. Some by-election madness. Janice Boylan, the Sinn Féin candidate for Dublin Central, has had to roll back on comments blaming fluoride in water for dental issues. Okay. So science on this is, you see, argued actually quite strenuously. I don't know, do you put fluoride in the water in the United States, Vincent?
Yeah. The case against fluoride in America is so old that if you watch the Stanley Kubrick movie, Dr. Strangelove, one of my favorite movies of all time, that movie's from 1964, I think. It might be off by a couple of years. And fluoride is a big theme of that movie. The guy who winds up, spoiler alert, leading to the destruction of the entire world is doing so because he's convinced that fluoridated water has sapped him of his natural essence and manhood. So, yeah, we are very, very familiar with fluoride, and we're very familiar with conspiracy theories about it.
Yes. So, during a council debate, Janice Boylan, the Sinn Féin candidate in Dublin Central, supported a motion to end water fluoridation, and she outlined how one of her family members was forced to undergo 2 dental extractions that she claimed were the result of fluoride in the water. This is not something new with Sinn Féin, right? This is something that they've been going on for at least 10 years. I'm going back to a motion in 2013 or 2014, I think. They brought in a motion in the Dáil, in our parliament, to have fluoride removed from the water.
What percentage of the Irish population is in favour of this? Is it 5%, 35%? There
was polling done on it a few years ago, and I think it was surprisingly in around 15%, something to that effect. Somebody come back and say it was much higher, but I have 15% in my head for some reason. So there's quite a constituency out there for this kind of thinking, you know.
It's become part of MAHA and RFK and the anti-vaccine movement. We actually have had 2 states, believe it or not. Pretty sure it's Utah and Florida that have ended fluoridation of public water.
Oh, they have?
Yeah. Which is bizarre because we've been doing it for like 80 years. It's a pretty big experiment, you know, like
for things to go wrong.
Like everyone's drinking this stuff. But that does, I think, get to the idea in that movement that something is killing us because we're not as healthy as we used to be. And they look for culprits, whether it's vaccines, but for some people it's fluoride. So it's interesting to hear that, though, in Ireland. It's interesting to hear that kind of at the national level of a significant party, right?
Yeah, they're the main party of opposition. Can I ask you, they're Republican-controlled legislators there in Florida and Texas, aren't they? Yeah, of course. I thought that. I don't know. I wanted to ask. I wanted to double-check.
It's a reasonable question because that has been a shift that has accelerated since Robert Kennedy started running for president late 2023. These kind of issues were a little bit more considered left-wing. It's become a right-wing issue much, much more in recent years.
No. Councillor Janice Boylan issued a statement saying, along the lines, her views have evolved, which reads as, I'm the party's candidate, no mad from me. But again, we had Rita Cronin, Kildare TD, another Sinn Féin TD, said a couple of years ago in a tweet that fluoride was making us docile, which would seem to...
Docile, yeah, okay.
Which seemed to imply that it's a form of mind control.
Right.
Now, Vincent, if fluoride was a form of mind control, the government parties will be romping home year after year, It's a fatal flaw, very fatal flaw in our arguments. And now Rita Cronin's always had some curious things. She was agreeing with tweets that suggested judges were paedophiles. She said, wouldn't surprise me, I'm no conspiracy theorist. I find his writing is usually on the walls. And she's had to apologise for a whole manner of things. She compared Jewish people to monkeys. She has quite a litany of deleted tweets. She had to delete her whole account actually and restart a new one, which would have, because there was so much problematic stuff there. They couldn't delete the stuff quick enough, because Tull had screenshotted them all. So
you know how Twitter works.
5G. You have a problem with 5G in the States as well, Vincent, don't you?
I feel like that one's faded a little bit, but yeah, you do hear that one from time to time. Yeah.
Yes, we have Fionn O'Sullivan, which in English means Fintan O'Sullivan, the TD for the bastardised constituency of Wicklow Wexford. He's a TD for that area, and he's been a regular anti-5G person now. He's vague when you ask him what does 5G do or what's it meant to do or whatever, but we should all be wearing tinfoil hats to stop ourselves being affected with the 5G beams.
Was there ever a 4G conspiracy theory, or did it just kind of jump up? There weren't conspiracy theories around 3G, and I don't think 4G, but 5G showed up, and all of a sudden people why did it take them 5 generations to come up with something that is doing whatever it's doing, whether it's mind control or...
My betting is that somebody somewhere on Reddit posted something about 5G waves, giving you cancer and stuff like that, and evolved from there. But I mean, you even had Per Starty. You've come across Per Starty before, haven't you? He's Ireland's longest serving opposition minister for finance,
right?
Or spokesman and person of finance. He was trying to set up a tribunal to investigate the health implications of 5G.
At least he's trying to find information as opposed to not just making blanket statements about that it's shrinking our genitalia or whatever else it's accused of.
So they've regularly brought in debunked pseudoscientists into the parliament. They even brought in an angel healer at one stage to lecture deputies on fluoride and 5G and all manner of bad things that are meant to be going on that were being poisoned by in society.
Sinn Féin brought this person in?
Yeah, they brought him into the Dáil, yeah. In 2014. I was trying to find the video tonight, but I can't find it. They must have had a scrub from somewhere. But
is an angel healer, they heal your guardian angel, they use the power of angels to heal you, or they're an angel themselves?
Vincent, I'm a learned man, but they started lolling in my head when I was trying to figure out what this angel healer does. They put their chakra on you or something. I have no idea. But I mean, bringing an angel healer into the Dáil when you've access to a battery of some of the best scientists in Europe when it comes to these things, and you bring in a bloody angel healer who got a diploma actually from somewhere in the United States. And when I dug into that person who she got her diploma of, they were very bad people. I could tell you, they had some very curious views that would get them cancelled quite promptly. These things have real world consequences, because you talk about RFK. There was an episode in Cork, of all places, a couple of years ago, where there was a measles outbreak. People stopped getting their kids vaccinated. And I believe only recently in the United States, the measles outbreak was stopped after they started vaccinating their children again.
Yeah, there was an outbreak again. In Issues Balance, that outbreak started with Mennonites who don't vaccinate as a result of faith. I'm as anti-RFK as it gets, but people kind of race to blame that on Kennedy's policies and his statements and things like that. In this case, it didn't play out that way, but we have vaccination that are falling and getting below, where you need them to be. There was an article on ProPublica, a nonprofit news organization here. They were talking about vitamin K shots, which are given to babies, and they're a very routine thing. There appears to be a spike in deaths that can be prevented by these injections, because then they're talking to pediatricians and go, oh, no, we don't want our kid getting vitamin K. The newborns get too many shots because they're going online. And Trump just said this last week. Oh, your kid's getting a vat. That's the word he used, a vat of stuff.
Well, Vincent, vitamin K is used to prevent bleeding in newborns because they're so vulnerable.
Yeah, it helps them clot, basically. And
essentially,
they don't, But it's the most benign thing in the world. Parents are just saying no for no other reason other than just sort of this steady buzz in the background that somehow giving your child these things is wrong or whatever, which is
mad.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I'm a little bit more surprised to hear that in Ireland. I just assume you guys are smarter than us. I really do. We have a bunch of expats here, and I was actually talking to my wife about that. When I talk to expats who I don't know well and I meet them, I just sort of instantly assume that I don't have to be on guard, that I can just have a normal conversation. Whereas if I meet Americans nowadays, I'm constantly all right, what does this guy believe? I'm constantly kind of looking for clues. I'm waiting for oh, that sounds like something Fox News would say. I don't want to talk to you.
Yes.
Expats, they just assume are reasonable, intelligent people.
Well, Vincent, that's creeping into Ireland as well at the moment.
Yeah.
There's a few guys, you might be up in the pub in the village, and by the minute they open their mouth, they spend too much time on Facebook.
Yeah.
Watching Fox News clips on Facebook,
yeah.
Vincent, that's what's going on. Yeah, you have to be realistic about the quality of our own elected representatives also.
Yeah.
As we said before, the United States is not an outlier in a lot of these things, and things go from bad to worse. Have you ever heard of Martin Brown, Sinn Féin TD for Tipperary, Vincent?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
I have heard of Tipperary, if that helps.
Yes, there's a long road there, apparently.
Yeah.
This guy was fairly not on my radar until this had happened a couple of years ago, okay? So Martin Brown Sinn Féin TD for Tipperary lost his seat in 2024, actually. He shared a post which suggested a hologram of a plane was used to fake the Twin Towers attack on September 11.
Okay.
Now, I think this runs into some problems, Vincent. Sinn Féin and very
sure
famous.
It does.
Right? And correct me if I'm wrong there, but, you know, you've been to New York.
I was in New York on 9/11, so.
Right, okay. So we have a live eyewitness account of the awfulness of that day, the terribleness. Something that scarred the psyche of the United States and will do for the next 50 years. Never will they want to be attacked again like that. So they're not there anymore, yeah?
Right.
And NORAD, friends of Sinn Féin in the United States, surely somebody could have pulled them to the side and taken them by the elbow and said, listen, pal, we've been to New York. Some of us were there that day. It happened. It did happen. Yeah. Why are you sharing this Facebook post? He shared the post and basically he was like saying, Jewish, like, when you read the article, it said Jewish space lasers were mentioned also. And I'm kind of, oh my God, what's going on here? Like, you know? And he shared the post and it said it'd make you wonder.
Well, was he saying that there was no plane or that the World Trade Center actually was never attacked?
Yeah.
The plane is a hologram or the World Trade Center is a hologram? Or I'm curious as to how all this works or if it just doesn't quite matter.
The gist of the article was it looked like it was a massive Hollywood blockbuster event to trick the people of New York and the world.
Okay.
It didn't happen. It didn't happen. This is not just Reddit stuff. This is the deepest, darkest swamps of the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. The 9/11 one has been a off and on conspiracy here for quite some time. Yeah.
But like Jewish space lasers that's as mad as it gets. It doesn't get any madder than that, I think. I think to be sharing a post suggesting that, you know, it was all faked is pretty wild. You know.
That's a tough one. Yeah.
Because you see people on social media and they'll give a very scientific explanation of why the buildings collapsed or, you know, the conspiracy around how they collapsed.
The usual argument is that jet fuel doesn't burn hot enough to melt those steel girders. The plane hit the Trade Center, yes, but that the Trade Center and the other buildings were also laced with explosives, which suggests that the U.S. government basically organized and executed the attack to have a pretense to go to Iraq and steal their oil.
So it's not just something confined to the United States. I wanted to level up the playing field here. And
I appreciate that. Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah. You guys have your people in the Doyle who believe in Jewish space lasers, and we had Marjorie Taylor Greene in Congress who believed in Jewish space lasers. So it's just all part of the horrifying human condition, I guess.
Yes. We also had Brian Stanley in Sinn Féin again, spreading conspiracy theories that you get COVID down your local Chinese.
Oh, that's right. Yep, that was a fun one. Yeah.
I heard the Wuhan bats to die for. Is a particularly strong strain going through Sinn Féin, and the argument's been out there for a long, long time that Sinn Féin has been light on its backbenches. So it's front benches, you know, Diona Brones, the spokesperson on housing, Claire Doherty, spokesperson on finance, and Mary Lou MacDonald. When you kind of strip away that those trio on Sinn Féin's front bench, they're lacking quite a bit, you know, in terms of people that are dealing with reality is what I would say, to be perfectly honest.
That's just such a comforting explanation for elected representatives. This party's got some good leadership, but you know what? I mean, they just don't have enough people who can deal with reality. Yeah.
And a more modern conspiracy theory is some of the stuff they've been saying about Russia. Okay. The Sinn Féin website last year, I think 2 years ago, deleted a load of pro-Russian propaganda from their website and stuff like that. This is the main opposition party in Ireland. You know, it's quite worrying. Your
argument is conspiracy theories have an outsized influence on Sinn Féin relative to other parties. What about the party do you think might make them more susceptible to that? What explains that distinction?
I think the same reason why the MAGA people believe more in conspiracy theories also. I think Sinn Féin and MAGA are both cut from the same cloth.
Interesting. Okay.
Right? So there was a study done in July of 2024 and it showed Sinn Féin voters were more likely to believe a small secret group of people is responsible for making all major decisions in world politics.
Okay.
Now, do you want to hazard a guess at the percentage?
This is their voters, not their...
Yeah, they're Sinn
not
Féin
their
supporters,
representatives.
yes.
Okay.
Sinn Féin voters, yes.
I'm going to go like 25%.
My friend...
Because I'm trying to guess based on your tone there.
No, it's actually 46% of Sinn Féin voters believe a secret group of people is responsible for making all world decisions. Okay,
is there a name for the secret group, or they're just saying that there is a secret group?
It's probably Tull in West Cork, and you and me, pulling the strings behind the background. This is a survey done of 1,000 people in Ireland, okay, by the National Election and Democracy Study. It's not some study somebody did on the internet. It was,
Yeah, it's not a Twitter poll. Yeah.
It's not a Twitter poll, exactly. But 46% of these voters, Sinn Féin voters, believe, there's a secret cabal, we're running the world, and 36% believe that scientists manipulate, fabricate, or suppress evidence in order to deceive the public.
That latter one, I was trying to think of what the 46% would be in America. I think it would actually Trump be lower for our population as a whole. I think the 36% we might be above.
Right.
I don't think there's a MAGA voter left who's not answering yes to that, particularly around the pandemic and things like that, where, they're still bringing it up. They just had a supposed CIA whistleblower in Congress this week alleging that the CIA was covering up the origins and all this stuff. And I can definitely see that. It is interesting that you're saying that Sinn Féin and MAGA are cut from the same cloth, because the political goals, the political beliefs are almost diametrically opposite, right? Sinn Féin.
Do you think so?
Sinn Féin is a left. Is a leftist. No?
I have a theory there. I've Tull's theory of Sinn Féin have more in common with MAGA than they do anybody that's left-wing in Europe, to be perfectly honest.
Okay. But economically, right, they're left. They're pro-labor, anti...
But you show me a political party in Ireland that's not left-wing.
Well, yeah, you guys are communists. We've talked about that for 8 months now. But I'm just saying, even by communist standards, I thought they were left-wing. But that's why I don't talk too much Irish politics on here.
They would tell you they're left-wing, but
okay.
I think you scratched that surface. There was an incident in the Dáil last year, and 3 different deputies got up and spoke about open borders. And it wasn't in a good way. It was, wasn't what you might hear from AOC or Newsom or whatever the case may be. It was actually more Trump-like than it was anything else.
Yeah.
So I think you scratched that surface there, and, they're left-wing on the streets, but Trumpian in the sheets.
Yeah, and I think there's an interesting counterpart to that, which is the idea if you scratch the surface of MAGA, they're not economic conservatives either.
No, they're not. No.
Trump could very, very easily have taken them in a pretty left-wing direction economically, and you see these little feints at it. Him trying to rescue a failing airline this month. He's come out against hedge funds owning single-family housing, which has historically have been a very, very left-wing. The 3 most liberal Democratic senators support this kind of issue that he came out on. So, yeah, there is an interesting counterpart to that. Part of the reason MAGA has become pro-conspiracy theory is that they are so explicitly anti-elite. But we have just a long, long history of that. Conspiracy theories are just part of American history, and it's like the Kennedy assassination is one where literally days after he's died, the conspiracy starts. It does feel a little bit broader and a little bit more turbocharged now. It goes to a view, really, that basically millions and millions of your fellow citizens are actively in service of making your life worse, which is what worries me about it.
To touch on your point there, I think in the same poll, the Sinn Féin supporters had the highest number of people that would vote for Donald Trump in an election as well.
Okay.
That all leads to Tull's theory that Sinn Féin are more MAGA populists than they let on to the general public. And I think they're being found out. I think they've plateaued now. I don't think they're not going to do much more than 23% in any election. I think Social Democrats kind of stealing in their lunch somewhat.
Understood.
And I think the strain of conspiracy theories is very, very strong in Sinn Féin, and a lot of people see through that, A lot of people see that when you scratch the surface, they have more in common with Trump than they have in common with, say, any kind of left-wing party in Europe. And we know political conspiracy theorists are dangerous because everything around Trump is a conspiracy theorist, would steal the vote, steal the election, they're already putting up conspiracy theories about your drum that you've been beating long before anybody else, before any pundit has, that come November, there'll be lots more conspiracy theorists about vote stealing, vote rigging.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We can't get away from that. We really cannot get away from that. And that's why conspiracy theories are so dangerous, because when politicians start spouting them, it lends them legitimacy.
But it also undercuts the faith of people in the government itself. And
Yes.
I'm not really a big government guy, but I do believe that we need government. I do believe government, by and large, does good things. And if people in the government are telling you that the government is doing evil things, the implications of that are quite obvious. That it's a loss of faith, it's a loss of patriotism, it's a loss of unity. It is a destructive thing, and that's the thing I find so concerning in America. We've talked about the rising conspiracy theories on the left around the assassination attempts on Trump, which are terrifying. The fact that the GOP, by and large, just won't stand up to any of these people, not just Donald Trump. And this predates Donald Trump. They let all these guys run loose for a while and let them get to a point where people like Alex Jones have so many supporters that now a GOP politician can't come out against them at risk of being primaried or losing political power or losing faith or getting death threats or whatever. So, yeah, some of them are silly, some of them are fun, but there's something really, really dark about them. And
well, Vincent, back in the day, 20 years ago, so you'd always be able to hide kind of your candidates' mad idiosyncrasies, you know.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
It's the Muslims, guys, it's the Jews, it's the Catholics, it's the Protestants. Take your pick at who's to blame for whatever's ills are plaguing your country, whoever's an easy target. And the thing is with social media now, there's always a digital trail of their madness. It's very hard to, you know, if somebody says to me, what do you think of this candidate, will you have a look into him or her? Will you do a background check on him? And I'll come back. If I come back to you within 10 minutes, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
There's a quote from the Irish author Anne Enright that always brings me back to these conspiracy theory politicians. And it's from a book called The Gathering, I think. And it says, people do not change, they are merely revealed.
Yeah.
And I think for all these conspiracy theory spreading politicians, that's what's going on there. They've always harbored these dark thoughts at the back of their
course.
mind.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I'll give you one of my favorite quotes to close with, because it is actually, I was going to say more hopeful, but I don't think it's hopeful, but it's at least a little more understanding, a little more generous in spirit. And this is from a book called Death of a President, which is written by a guy named William Manchester in 1967. He knew JFK before he was shot. Oh. And Jackie Kennedy basically assigned him to write the authorized version of what happened before and after the assassination. And in the introduction to the book, Manchester addresses all the conspiracy theories going around. He says, I've done all this research and I don't believe them, but he gives a note of understanding. And he says, those who desperately want to believe that President Kennedy was a victim of a conspiracy have my sympathy. I share their yearning. And I always thought this struck out so much to me. He says, if you put the murdered president of the United States on one side of a scale and that wretched waif Oswald on the other, it doesn't balance. You want to add something weightier to Oswald. It would invest the president's death with meaning, endowing him with martyrdom. He would have died for something. And there's just a lot of conspiracy theory, I think, at its heart is a way for us to try and give meaning to things that seem horrific and meaningless. But it's also not something that our elected leaders should be doing.
No, it's not. They should exercise restraint, like us, Vincent.
Exactly. I was trying to go for sympathy. We just closed with sheer condescension. That's all right.
Yes, sorry, what's the word I'm looking for there, Vincent?
Unrepentant?
Yes, I'm unrepentant, Vincent. That's exactly what it is. I'm an unrepentant cynic as well. There's no cure for that at my age. Like, you can get a cure for measles, you can get a cure for your rickets, you can get a cure for most things these days, but there's no cure for political cynicism, I'm afraid.
No, you probably caught it from a vaccine.
Yes, I did. I caught it from a vaccine. There's no doubt about that. I'm Tull from the Irish Politics Newsletter.
Not Vince Martin. Thanks as always.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.